What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon. We are about an hour away from the waiver process before practice squads start to get built concludes, I believe. So, still waiting to see what goes on with the Seattle Seahawks in that regard. It's going to be very interesting over the next couple of days to see how the practice squad comes together. But we're not quite there yet. So, I thought now would be a pretty good opportunity to take a look around the league at some of the Seattle Seahawks early 2024 opponents. So we know what's going on with the Seahawks. We know what they're not going to have in the initial few games of the season. We have a pretty good idea of what we will have, but there's another side to that. You need to know what the other team is going to have. So I wanted to take a look at the current roster situations of the first four Seattle opponents because that's when the injured players that are on IR, on the PUP, might be able to come back. So once you get past the fourth game, I think it's kind of like a guessing game. But these first four, we can get a pretty good idea of who we're going to be dealing with. So let's go ahead and go down the list here. Before we get into this, though, I hope you like this video. If you do, please click the thumbs up button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want daily Seahawks content. You can click the bell for notifications every time a video goes live. Become a member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help out the channel. All right, so let's start with the Denver Broncos, week one opponent here, and they don't look like they're in terrible shape in terms of health. The big loss, as of right now, for the Broncos would be Damari Mathis. Damari Mathis was placed on the IR designated to return list Tuesday, so he is expected to miss 4 games, maybe more, but for our purposes, the first game is the only game that really matters for us. So Damari Mathis is a relatively young player. He was a fourth-round pick a couple of years ago, and he's been fairly good when he's played. He just hasn't played a ton yet. He was probably going to end up a starter full-time this year, which he had not been yet. He had been a part-time starter the previous 2 years, 22 and 23. But Mathis missing the start of the season means that you're probably looking at Riley Moss actually starting at cornerback in game number 1. There are a couple of other injuries of note here, but I think a lot of them are on guys that either don't play very much or will play in week 1. You have to go back to July to see the Drew Sanders injury. That one is certainly significant, but we've known about that one for over a month now, so it's not really anything surprising. And other than that, I think Denver's actually in pretty decent shape going into the opener. Okay, so the next team would be the New England Patriots, and they are not in very good shape. So this is their injury report right now on ESPN's page. There's quite a bit going on here in the last few days alone. Tyrone Wheatley Jr., Armin Watts, Marty Mapu, Calvin Anderson. They have the Jacoby Brissett situation, although it looks like he'll be okay and ready to go for week 1, much less week 2. Cole Strange is on IR. Kendrick Bourne is on the PUP list. So there's a lot going on here with some key pieces, and I didn't even get to the big one yet. We'll get to that in a second here. I mean, you go back just a few days, and like even a guy like Sidney Sowell, the guard, who I actually watched get hurt in the final preseason game, that's something that might actually matter because that Patriots offensive line is so bad. Losing a guy like Sidney Sowell is kind of a big deal. So they've got some issues here. They've got some stuff they're going to have to work through here, but I didn't even touch the big one yet. Christian Barmore battling blood clots. Expected to miss at least the first few games of the season, could miss a lot more. Remember, blood clots was what got Chris Bosh. He had to retire. He literally could never play basketball again because of that injury, so that's no joke. But if you were going to talk about one guy the Patriots are going to be missing when they play the Seahawks in a couple of weeks, Barmore would be number one. He had a big breakout year last year after being picked in the early second round by the Patriots. 8.5 sacks, 64 tackles, 13 tackles for loss. One of the few worthwhile pieces on a team that was really bad last year. So Christian Barmore not being there is a seismic shift in what we can expect to get out of New England as an opponent. And that's not to downplay anything else. I mean, Cole Strange, remember when Cole Strange was, I think he was their first round pick a few years ago. Now, he hasn't really panned out. I don't know if they expect anything from him at this point, but still, this was probably a put up or shut up season. You had Kendrick Bourne. He was going to be one of their top wide receivers in all likelihood. He's going to be out until at least week 5. So New England is beat up right now. And speaking of beat up, we got to talk about the Miami Dolphins next. Looking at their injury list, it's fairly substantial. Some of these guys don't matter a ton, but there are a few guys here who matter a lot. So you, ooh, excuse me. Earlier today, they put Cam Smith on injured reserve, Wyatt Ray, Isaiah Wynn, Cameron Good, River Cockcraft. Most of this other stuff that's earlier, I think, is pretty minor. Like Anthony Schwartz, I don't think was going to be a big part of that team. I think a lot of these earlier injuries are guys who are mostly going to be fine. But we're really focusing on 2 guys from this list. First is Odell. He is going to start the season on the PUP list, which will rule him out for the first 4 games. So no Odell when we play the Miami Dolphins. And no Bradley Chubb, their best pass rusher. He will be missing that game when we play the Dolphins. So Bradley Chubb, I mean, he was one of their big trade gets from the Denver Broncos. He was former top 5 overall pick. He made the Pro Bowl in 2022. Last year, he had 11 sacks for a Dolphins team that made the playoffs. One of the league leaders in forcing fumbles. So really good pass rusher, really dangerous player. And we now know for a fact Miami will not have him. So that's kind of the tip of the spear. Now, Odell is more of a big name at this point than he is like a big loss, because Miami still has 2 of the best receivers in football even without Odell. But it is still notable that they're not going to have him, because that would give them maybe literally the best receivers in football if they had all 3. And there's plenty of other stuff going on here that could definitely affect a game against Miami in week 3. So, not looking too good for Miami either. They can't be thrilled with the way their health currently sits going into the season. Final team I want to look at here will be the Detroit Lions. They're not doing too bad overall. I don't think they're in bad shape right now. I remember there was a practice they had a couple weeks ago where I think Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs got hurt, and it looked bad, but they were both fine to my knowledge. So they dodged a big bullet there. The only real thing of note here, to my knowledge, would be Emmanuel Moseley. And Emmanuel Moseley always gets hurt, so you can't say that Detroit is surprised by this, right? Like, he never played a full season in San Fran. Maybe 2019, I guess you could say, was kind of a full season. But since then, he's missed a ton of time. He played 1 game last year, didn't record any stats, and then just pieced out for the rest of the season. And if he ends up not playing it all this season, how can anybody be surprised? Played 5 games in 2022, 11 in 2021, 12 in 2020. It just keeps getting worse and worse, right? So he's starting the season on injured reserve. They expect him to return, but not going to be until week 5 at the earliest. And given his track record, it'll probably be a lot longer than that. That's really about it in terms of really important stuff. Maybe Traquan Smith, right? But he wasn't going to be one of their top guys anyway. They got some other depth guys that are on injured reserve, probably going to miss some time, but not going to be the focal points of a Detroit Lions game. All right, so that's what we're up against right now. We got 2 upcoming opponents that look pretty healthy, but then we've got 2 that they're just beat up right now. They got some problems, and I don't envy being in their position. Let me know what you guys think. I'll see you guys later. We'll probably get some Seahawks news later. Go Hawks. See you soon.